I'm told we can continue for about another 10 minutes or so. So let's continue. We were talking about the private sector. Yeah.
Private sector. I was thinking, taking a issue little forward from, I think private sector is important and the issue which they were trying to discuss, but I think I would also try to divert your attention to the caste-based atrocities which is occurring across country, especially with the Dalits and especially more particularly with Dalit women. And I think the nature of the crime is very brutal, very severe, and I think it somewhere also again reminds how Dalits are being excluded again and again in different forms, and how women are being targeted to sort of take revenge from the entire community in a certain manner.
Yes, I think you've put that very well. I remember that the Indian Human Rights Commission issued a report about no discrimination against the Dalits. Are you aware of that report? It was a few years ago, but it was it was clearly ruling out discrimination and recognizing that for the Dalit women it's particularly difficult. So I think it's important that reports and court cases and every tool is used to keep up a struggle against that kind of discrimination. But also, you made the very important point, these are deep cultural issues within families, and so it needs men and also young men and boys to help to remove the discrimination.
Definitely.
So, is there any group, like we do have Dalits over here, scheduled castes and scheduled tribes, which is basically excluded or which is outcasted, which is discriminated? Is there any kind of group in Western countries also, since you are working for human rights, for achieving human rights or for implementing human rights or against the violation of human rights? So, is there any group like this existing in Western countries also?
Well, I think that the Human Rights Council in Geneva is for the first time taking more seriously discrimination on the basis of caste, and I think that this is important because, as you said, it is a big issue, but it tends not to be visible enough. And I think the fact that you are addressing this as a group, that you are speaking about it very openly, is very important. There are different kinds of discriminations in different countries. In my own country, we have what's called the small travelling community, and they are not quite like the Roma in Europe, where there's big discrimination against the Roma. They are not associated directly, but they are an indigenous Irish group, and they are discriminated against, and they have less access to education, they have larger family size, they have more poverty, and so every country has its share of these issues of marginalisation and discrimination, and it's very important that as young citizens that you are focused on these issues and really care. That's what I like about the way you're telling me about the discriminations. You care about it, and I think that's really important.
What type of tools you are using to bring them in mainstream?
That's right, and again, we have the global agenda now of the Millennium Development Goals, and in each country, and you have a very large country, so in each state of India as well, there are different issues, but I think we have the opportunity for a big mobilization in the coming days against poverty from the 16th to the 18th, and then there is also going to be a high-level meeting in the United Nations in New York next September, and I think maybe the Students' Union and other young groups in India could mobilize to make the Millennium Goals more human rights, so that they reach all the marginalized, so that they are done on a basis of equity and fairness, much more than just numbers coming out of poverty. It's also important that it reaches the poorest and most marginalized and discriminated, the Dalits and the castes that are discriminated against. So maybe you could do a special mobilization for that summit next September. and make sure that the government representatives who come to that high-level meeting have heard the voice of young people like you.
Definitely.
So, ma'am, do you think that we are going to achieve these goals, World Millennium Development Goals by 2015? Since many things are yet to be taken or are yet to be done. So, do you think you are going to achieve these goals in 6 years?
Well,
we are left with 6.
Yeah, what could happen, and this would be a mistake in my view, is that we might say that the overall poverty goal of having those in poverty is achieved, partly because of the way India and China are bringing many people out of poverty. But the trouble is that that doesn't take into account that there are countries and parts of countries where you still have far more than 50% in poverty. I do a lot of work in African countries, and we know that, you know, if you talk about a global average, you're not talking about the reality of the poverty and the lack of access to proper health, education, even right to food and safe water and sanitation. So, in my view, if we take a human rights approach and look at the most marginalized in countries, then we have a much tougher job to reach those goals. And also, as I'm increasingly aware, we have the problem of climate change. For poor farmers, they have worse climatic conditions. I don't know if you've come across this problem, but I'm very aware. Please, yes? What did you want to say?
So, what would you suggest as our youth wing? What kind of initiative we should take in order to achieve the goals?
Exactly, I think what you are yourselves saying, that it must be more comprehensive. So in education, you must have regard particularly for the girl child, the adolescent girl, that she stays in secondary school and that she is able to combat the barriers, particularly for a young Dalit or a caste young girl and woman, that the more marginalised, and they include the lower castes in the society, must be part of the way forward. And that's a human rights approach, which says every voice must be heard. We must care about the dignity and worth of every individual. So I like really very much what you're saying. And I think you can be energised, I hope, by the wide mobilisation. How many millions will come out against poverty in the next few days? And then how do we prepare actively for the high-level summit next September in New York, where the voices of young people on behalf of those who are not able to fight easily for themselves, and the work that you are doing and the engagement that you're showing, let's have those voices heard. I'll also be working with a whole network of women's groups and those fighting poverty and for children's rights and against HIV and AIDS in African countries, where we are doing a lot of linking and work. And India is a great country to link on this. So I want to really encourage you, be active, be engaged, do what you're doing, but do more of it. And especially come out in the next few days with many, many more. Send messages to all your friends to be part of this action against poverty, because numbers matter.